has, it's the money that's given to you. So, very simply, Barack Obama in the previous campaign versus John McCain, Barack Obama crushed McCain in his overall financing. And I think it's very transparent that it has a strong effect because his capabilities are much more powerful. So anyway, I don't want to go on that tangent, but ultimately what I would say is that the structural system on multifacets is not only a slavery-based system, it's an illusion that has been created to think it's normality to function the way we do. And the psychological ramifications, which people really need to think about, is, again, as I mentioned before, this chiseling off of each other. And I think people need to really understand that about themselves and start to think about their own morality, so to speak, whatever that may be, and how they're literally broken away from their ability to be ethical because you can't be ethical in the system. It's inherently corrupt because the only way you can survive is by gaining differential advantage one way or another over another group or individual. And that's really the absolute foundation of it. So if people think about that, I think they would wake up to the need to get change, the need for change, and to move out of such a system.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure if you just answered my question, because I wanted to explore, if you will, for a moment, the idea of money. I don't want to go on too long about this, but I, for example, 2 years ago said to myself, I don't care about money anymore. I've actually ditched it, and I value friendships and creativity and other things is far more valuable, actually. What you were just proposing and talking about the Venus projects in regard to different non-finance based economy, essentially, isn't it? It's not using monetary system. It's kind of using lots of other energies, and I think when you have money at the centre, it very much shapes everything you do. So how do we get? I would love to see a society that's not based upon money. Any thoughts you might share about any insight you have working in producing Zeitgeist, how we might actually get to there from where we are at the moment on money-based system to something that's not maybe so heavily focused on money? Any thoughts you might share on that?
Well, sure. There's numerous steps I think that could be taken. First of all, you could try to eliminate the scarcity in the money supply itself. You could get rid of interest. You could have a non-interest-based system. You could have the governments take over the production of fiat currency, which is, of course, still fake money, but they could make algorithms that would make the money have a relationship to the actual goods and services in the system. And this is something that's really not done whatsoever. In the current system, it's not done at all. So very little mathematical modeling is happening whatsoever. So in other words, you could have a system where it is a medium of exchange, and it doesn't exist in scarcity, which means there's enough to go around, but it's only going to happen to a certain degree. So those things would be helpful because people wouldn't, like the government wouldn't have to pay interest on its loans, and people would have to pay interest on their loans. And that's, of course, very helpful. So I think that's transitional and a good step. But in the end, it's just patchwork because it's still creating competition. It's still people at each other's necks to survive. I think the next thing that needs to happen is the first layers of abundance technologically need to occur. So you would have food, energy, free. You could give it a socialist name, whatever you want to call it. Eventually, there's no reason, based on the amount of abundance and capabilities that we have, the technological ability to create abundance, that we have to have people pay for food. It should be one of those things that, because it's a necessity, and eventually this will be extended. So energy free, food free. How is it free? I mean, basically automation of the systems that create it could be so powerful that you'd have very few people that would need to be employed in it. Those are two very simple things, and eventually it would move to stronger freedom, stronger things distributed for society. Eventually you'd end up with distribution centers to get whatever you needed, because it's just like a factory at a corporation, but it's just everything's there, like a library. You go to the library and you get a book and you return it, and you could go there and get a microwave. Take it. There's no reason to take multiple ones because you can't sell it because there's no money in the system, at least hopefully at the point in time when that's actually an availability. So it's created in abundance, and you could do it in a step-by-step manner. I think it's very feasible to do that. But in the end, it's going to take a larger leap because as long as the human value system, which is another point, doesn't undergo change, you're going to have people that are going to reject this concept for many, many reasons. So simultaneously, you have to have the human value system change at the same time, which is a difficult topic. The transition, to put it very quickly and simply, the transition will have to occur, I think, basically in a step-by-step manner up to a point, and then a big jump will have to happen. Because there's no way to do it perfectly fluidly, because you're always going to have remnants of the old human value system that's going to mess it up. So it might sound very difficult to understand, but I think it's going to take a big shift, and people are going to have to really adjust. And I think that's with the financial collapse right now. It's going to be a catalyst.
Kind of like the 100 monkey theory.
Sure.
The 100 monkey theory, kind of sudden change. So it goes on unseen and untalked about just then.
Yes, exactly.
I think that would.
And true social change happens very quickly, actually. The real cataclysmic social change, I think, happens very quickly, due to biosocial pressures. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
It's a difficult question.
It is, very,
what I think about the most, and there's many different angles for it, but essentially you have to just start changing really the human value system more than anything else. You have to get rid of this greed mechanism that's constantly perpetuated.
And of course the media is a great way of doing it. Using Zeitgeist on the internet, it's been seen by how many people?
The first film, I have to say conservatively, is, I say 50 million, but I think it's actually much larger than that. And the new one, I have to say about 3 million so far. So big surge of people initially who watched it. I'm sure will slow down. But
I just wanted to explore with you briefly what led you up to creating Zeitgeist. Why did you do it? Why didn't you just sit there and do whatever it is you fancied doing? Why specifically were you motivated to go and make this?
Well, I think initially the first film came out of a certain degree of angst and an upset disposition with the current power establishment. 9/11 was a very traumatic experience, being in New York, and then slowly going back years later and realizing what actually happened, or at least what seems to have happened. The government story has been proven, I think, definitively to be the conspiracy theory, and I think that's important that people think about, because it shows how far the system wants to go in order to preserve itself. That's the way I see it. Well, of course, lots of money being made, lots of legal actions based on it, but that was a catalytic point for me. I was like, well, I want to do something for my own conscience. I just felt like doing something. It wasn't that I felt I could actually change anything, but I think people, and I think this is a good point, I think people, when they get to a certain point, they want to do something. They don't want to just be rewarded with money for things that they do. They want something more. I think there's a lot of emptiness in most people, because they have nothing. All they have is their jobs and their money and their families, which of course is important, but there's something missing that is intrinsically flawed. It's a flaw in the system that creates a big gap, because there's an emptiness because of the forced element of the system itself. And not to mention, the destitute, when you realize, say, that the government might be responsible, and there's a history of this type of stuff, of multiple governments doing stuff like this. So 9/11 was a big catalyst for that. I've always studied religion. Religion was always very interesting to me. I studied, very countercultural religion. Started reading things that most people did not read. People from the 1800s that did all these investigative things that was very much suppressed. And then the banking system was sort of an afterthought, because I really hadn't learned much about it until I started realizing, like 9/11, I was like, well, they're making so much money, and I sort of fell into the banking system thinking about it. And then it started changing. The next film came out. I was like, this makes perfect sense. And I think about my life, and I think about all my friends and my family, that you grow up, you have a natural curiosity as a child, and you grow, and suddenly you're slowly oriented through education, and you get through college, you're put in debt, and then you have to find your slot that's pre-existing, usually. That's pre-existing for you to live and survive. So you're basically raped of your general curiosity and ability to be free by the system itself. And I began to ask myself, well, what's the value of most occupations anyway? What's the value of certain people doing, secretaries and working at Kmart and people doing what are basically totally mindless occupations? People say, oh, they have to exist. Well, that's the thing that isn't true. That was what inspired me. Through technology, we don't have to clean out sewers anymore with our hands. We have machines that do this. We don't have to go to the coal mines anymore. We don't have to do tons of things. An automobile production plant, which was considered very dangerous back when all humans were doing it, now is 95% automated. So this is an important revelation, and it's time society shift this focus, and that's why the latter half of Zeitgeist Addendum, I go into this point very specifically, and of course the social design. So it's multifaceted. That was a growth period for me, but I think the initial trigger was 9/11. Honestly, it was at that moment I decided to do something. So.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. We're all working here on the same sort of premise.
Yeah.
So is there going to be an addendum too? Or?
No, I don't think so.
No, what's next for you? What's your next?
I'm not sure. I'm here to advocate the movement now, which is a lot of work. So the website is zeitgeistmovement.com. There's tons of stuff that I have to do to get this up and running. I have a lot of work that will cover years. So my media work is important, my creative work is important, but I'll probably do smaller projects, but I don't think I'll make another feature film for a while. I'm pretty much satisfied with these two productions, and there's no reason to just keep it going unless I have something very specific. There's so much stuff that can be supplemental to to these films that doesn't need to occur in a film, needs to occur in information, and we just